Why is Jinx with the chat? Whoa. All the newcomers. This is your peers. This is a collective chat list. All right, here we go. This is chat's top 10. Here we go. Jing's in the lead. Jing, of course, always performs at the start of a tournament. Oh god.
Is that the finish line? RieNs is freaking done with the race. Wait, is that a portal or is that the finish line? Oh, do you have to make it?
You love to see it. This is what we're talking about. Pavin and Leaf all the way up front. Dude, Leaf is freaking killing it until it matters. Did Pavin make it? Oh, Pavin made it! Oh, shoot! Okay, by the way, did Nats make it? Hold on, what's going on here? What is going on here? Not like this. Not like this. Oh my god.
Welcome everyone, it's Chobra, and we are finally ready to reveal our top 10 players at Masters Toronto. Now, as you just saw, we've been spending a lot of time and effort to figure out who really deserves to be in the top 10. We've been gathering the expert opinion of those in chat. We've even been leaving it up to the fate to decide who's going to be the top players. We've gone through everything possible, and after much more research and a lot of deliberation on my own, I've concluded what my final 10 is going to be. Now, I just want to cover a couple things before I start to reveal it. When it comes to, okay, I had a couple players in mind, what am I valuing here? For me, it's going to be, do I think this player has the impact, right? Are they winning? Are they turning around those rounds? Are they winning the rounds that were hard to win? Is it their decision? Is it this person's decision that made the round winnable? Now, that's going to be subjective up to a certain point, but just know that I actually tend to value that a bit higher than just pure consistency, but we're going to try to balance things out as we go through the top 10. So without further ado, let me just briefly explain what I use to get to this top 10, and then we'll jump right into the list. So as you can see, I was watching a lot of the VODs, I watched a lot of the matches live, we took a look at VLR.gg for a lot of the scoreboards and a couple of the basic stats, and of course VLR's rating system as well, and then we included some stats from oracleselixir.com. So for those who don't know, this is a website that Sideshow actually brought to light for a lot of us, including myself, but this is a website that talks about that first abbreviation, RAR, rounds above replacement, which basically means how many more rounds do we think this player is getting you? Like, how many more rounds are they winning? Are they impacting the win for your team compared to if you got just a average Joe replacement player? And in this case, an average Joe replacement indicates an average Challengers player. So average Challengers players should technically have a 0 RAR, and the website explains that from their calculations, the average VCT Tier 1 player should have a 1.5 RAR on average. So anything above that is like you even stand out within Tier 1, but below that doesn't mean that you don't deserve to be in Tier 1, it just means that you're just within that range, which is like stronger than Challengers, but you might not be single-handedly impacting things. Now, as with any stat, you're leaving out a lot of things. Like, obviously you can't take into account IGLing, comms, any of that, so no stat should ever be the end-all be-all, but it's nice to have another different look. You can go to oracleselixir.com to take a look at more of their reasoning on how they use their own calculations. Obviously, VLR has their own rating system that you can try to look up and study as well, so maybe that helps you kind of compare if you like to look at stats. But the rest of it, take a look at the screen as we talk about them, and now without further ado, let's jump right in. Before we do, if you end up liking this video, do please consider leaving a like on it and leaving a comment down below, because that helps the algorithm a ton. And of course, if you're new, consider subscribing to the channel. Now let's talk about our 10th best player at Masters Toronto. In number 10, we're going to start out with somebody who I think is very, very consistent and perhaps deserves a little bit more attention than I think they're getting. It's going to be Bang, coming out from Sentinels out of VCT Americas, primarily playing that controller role for the team. Now, some of you might be like, what do you mean needs more attention? A lot of people are talking about Bang, and I do agree, especially more than before. I think ever since he's joined Sentinels, he's had a couple more shining moments that consistently remind people that, like, this guy's good. Like, you should really be looking at this guy. He's actually a very, very important part of the Sentinels roster now. And I completely agree. I just think that his impact might be bigger than some people imagine. And you can see that with the very first key stat, 2.8 rounds above replacement. Quite high. I think anything right around 3.0 is considered very high, because if on average a VCT Tier 1 player should have a 1.5, that means you're well above average, right? So 2.8, very, very high. Now, when I say consistent KD line, basically what I'm saying is he's never had below 28 kills in a best of series. So always 28 or more, which, unless you look at the entire spreadsheet, etc. But if you watch enough matches, I think especially on a controller role where you're not always going to be part of every single fight, 28 kills or more in every best of series is quite respectable. I think it's very consistent. That means you've never really had stinkers where you're getting so much less. Also, he's never had a kill differential, right? So not ratio, but differential lower than -3. And even the -3, if I recall correctly, it's only 2 or 3 matches where he had either a -3 or a -2. So again, he's never having such a bad day or such a bad game that it's irreversible, that it's leaving a mark. Also very, very good clutches. So all across the board, he's like in the top percentile. None of it is like you're absolutely the best, but if you're able to do that across all of these different stats, I think you absolutely deserve to be top 10. In number 9, it is going to be another player known for his consistency. It is the initiator for Team Heretics coming out of VCT EMEA, RieNs. Now, originally RieNs I like put in my list, took out of my list, put back in my list, but he's one of those players that actually looking at the stats, I was like, okay, actually, I should include him. He's top 5 EMEA stage 1 rounds above replacement, 2.9. Very, very high. Again, very close to that 3.0. And he is, I mean, I think this just goes to prove what we all thought, that he is very impactful in that initiator role. Also, if you go to oracleselixir.com, on some of the charts, you can see what they rate as consistency. So is this player consistently putting up these numbers, or is it, you know, maybe certain outliers that is raising or lowering their RAR? And he has a 5 out of 5 consistency. So I think that, again, just goes to prove that, okay, what most of us saw and we thought is very true. He is always there, showing up. The reason he's at number 9 instead of, like, say something like top 5, I do think is partially because of Heretics' performance in the last stages of the playoffs, right? Losing to Fnatic twice, both in the upper bracket and then in the grand finals as well. They looked rough in those matches. Now, I don't want to put too much weight in there, so I'm not leaving him out of the top 10, but I do think there is some consideration there where it's like, okay, well, you weren't able to have that impact at all in the grand finals. So even if your team lost, I wasn't really seeing it happen, you know, from you, where you were like still able to really leave a mark on that match. So I do think that took away from it a little bit. Now, KST, not a huge stat, but I think if you're number 1 in anything, it's always worth giving a shout out. And of course, speaking of consistency, consistently getting second place in VCT Grand Finals. Now, in number 8, this is going to be kind of my personal punt here. My personal bias coming in, it's going to be crashies, playing initiator for Fnatic starting this year out in VCT EMEA. So switching over regions, he's now playing in EMEA and actually gets his career first regional trophy in EMEA, funny enough. But I just think crashies has brought a lot of impact for Fnatic. Even the RAR, not bad, still much higher than the average. So I think that alone should prove my point a little bit. But why is crashies above RieNs? Well, from watching it, I just felt like crashies had many more rounds where I'm like, crashies won them that round. Like, literally, this was crashies. And you look at the clutches, 13 clutches in just stage 1. With a 24% success rate. So 1 out of 4 times if crashies is left alone, he's getting you that round win. And he did that 13 times across all of stage 1. 13's a lot, by the way. Like 13 successful clutches is huge. I mean, generally, just to do it in a year, I think is pretty big. But to do that in one stage, I mean, that means that crashies kept Fnatic going in a lot of these times. And I think, to me, I consider that very valuable. Like I said in the beginning, if I think 2 players are somewhat similar, to me, if they are bringing that oomph, that X factor just a couple more times, I count that as higher. I also think crashies historically was always a player that you kind of thought of that way. So for him to show that form again and fairly consistently, I think I rated that quite highly. So while overall numbers, RieNs generally higher on most fronts, I do think crashies gets the edge here on my list and puts him at number 8. Next up, in number 7, we're going to be moving away from the controllers and the initiators, all very important roles, but let's talk about a duelist. It's going to be Zekken playing for Sentinels out of VCT Americas. And I mean, overall, look at these numbers, a 0.20 first kills per round. Now, personally, that to me is one of the most important stats. That's the first thing I look at when people say, I think so-and-so is the best duelist. I'm like, okay, well, let's see if they can put up the numbers. And I'm not taking a look at overall frags. I'm taking a look at, okay, how many first kills are you getting? Because if you're not opening things up, then you might have great aim, but maybe you just shouldn't be playing duelist, right? So to me, this tells me that you are playing your role and you're playing it well. You got to remember that 0.2 is already quite high because obviously sometimes you're playing defense and you might not always have the choice of first kill. But a lot of times in attack, you have that initiative. So that's where you're able to make up for a lot of it. So 0.20 quite high. Now, just know that there is a difference between just FKPR, first kills per round, and then untraded, which means you guaranteed a 5v4 round. So this is just generic first kills per round. Some of the players later will talk about untraded first kills per round. ACS, another number that's not too important, but I do think if you're averaging 243 over 475 rounds, that's a pretty high number to consistently be putting up for your team. So I think, again, that just goes to show that the kills he's getting, the frags he's getting, the space he's creating is bringing impact for the team. Overall, a respectable kills per round, nothing of the craziest sort, but still quite close to, 0.9, which I think is generally where you would start to look at and be like, this person is fragging out round after round. And I think Zekken originally I thought would be higher on this list, to be honest. But to me, I think I rated him higher in my mind because his growth has just been impressive year after year. And not to say that he was a bad player before, but I think that's what's impressive about it, that he's continuing to grow even more. And every year I look at Zekken, I'm like, okay, I got to raise the bar even higher for him. Like next year, I got to raise it higher again. And I think, listening to some of their comms and the replays, the way he's playing, the decisions he's making, to me has signified that he's really become a pillar of Sentinels. And so I might put him higher. Let's say if I was like scouting from the top 10 for a team, right? If I was a GM, I might rate him higher in that front. But for a purely top 10 list, we're going to keep him at 7. Number 6, the last one to round out the bottom 5 of this list, it's going to be none other than apparently now the pop-off king, Forsaken. Can we just say, I've never seen Forsaken pop off this hard. Like, we've seen him celebrate, we've seen him like be happy, but this is like, I'm getting Hungry Box vibes out here, right? Like, I'm getting FGC vibes out here with this pop off. It's crazy. I saw this photo. I was looking for photos of players and I'm like, what? I've never, like, I knew they got emotional for this win because this was the win, I believe, over DRX to get to Masters Toronto. But this was a crazy good photo. But just in case you're new to VCT and maybe you don't follow Pacific as much, I'll give you a better photo to see what he looks like when he's not popping off and jumping up on stage. And this is him playing ping pong. So this is going to be Forsaken from Paper Rex. What position does he play? Well, if you didn't know, nobody knows because he flexes all around, and that is the craziest thing about Forsaken. He played 8 different agents in stage 1 and across 4 different roles. So he played all roles and 8 of them, and then he was putting up consistent numbers across the board to the point where he actually had the second highest total kills in VCT Pacific in stage 1. Crazy. He is literally doing everything for the team. So I think that alone, this is one of those rare cases where, like, okay, your flexibility absolutely counts for you as value to get into a top 10 list. Now, normally this would be enough to like put him in top 5, but as you're about to see, our top 5 players have some funky numbers going on. So it was a tough shout, but I still wanted to make sure that Forsaken was included, and I think you have to value this very, very highly. Excited to see what him and the team can do to see if they can keep the train going at Masters Toronto. Now let's talk about top 5. So we are getting into that silver medal category of our top 10 players, and to kick things off, it is going to be a Sentinel. It's going to be Leaf, one singular Leaf coming out of G2 Esports from VCT Americas, playing primarily that Sentinel role. And while I think he was even bigger of a carry factor in the beginning of the year where he was playing a lot of chamber, still think he's putting up the crazy numbers that he's consistently known for. And I think this is just a reminder that that's always been true of Leaf's career. He's always putting up numbers no matter where he's put. I mean, look at the RAR, rounds above replacement, top 3 in America's stage 1 with a 3.3 scoreline. So earlier we were talking about like 2.9, 2.8, 2.4, all pretty good, excuse me. But above 3.0, that's twice greater than the average tier 1 VCT player. So I think if he is bringing you that many round wins, you gotta consider him one of the best players that we're gonna see at Masters Toronto. Also was in the top 10 VLR ratings within Americas, and a generally high kill death ratio. But what's crazy here is that G2 had to play 663 rounds. Now, yes, I know it should have been lower. Like, they only play that many rounds because they let themselves play that many rounds. So yeah, in some ways that might have to count against them. But also, if you're able to maintain a basically 1.2 kill death ratio over that many rounds, I think you got to consider that this guy, at least single-handedly, is able to hold his own no matter what situation he's put in. I think the way that Leaf anchors, he's a sentinel where if you're playing against G2, you have to prep specifically against Leaf. You have to invest a lot to make sure you're winning the fight against him to get onto the site, and that alone I think is very commanding, right? If you're able to just throw that much util, you're already bringing value just because of the threat that you pose. But if you don't approach him, does he just sit there? No, he will go and actively get that space. He will be able to cut off the enemy on those times that they need it, where G2 needs to gain macro control of the map, and Leaf is there for them. So I think to have someone that reliable who just imposes a threat, that is a threat factor off the rip for the opponent team, I think is very, very valuable. So we don't have many Sentinels on this list. In fact, he might be the only one, but in terms of primary Sentinels, but that's why he's going to be shining in the top 5. Next up in rank number 4, it is going to be Kaajak. It is not Boaster, but I wanted to find just a fun photo because I love the vibe that Fnatic has, and this was a nice photo of Kaajak and Boaster, so Boaster gets to sneak into the top 5 here. Spoiler alert, he is not in the top 3, but Kaajak is going to be number 4, the rookie duelist for Fnatic playing out a VCT EMEA. Now, originally, Kaajak was one of those players that's like, ooh, lots of potential, but I didn't really think about him as a top 10 player. But then playoffs came around, and then I was like, okay, yeah, this is what we were promised, and more, actually. I mean, he dropped plus 40, so he had 40 more kills than deaths in the grand finals against Team Heretics. That is a crazy number. Ended up the entire stage 1 as the top VLR rating in EMEA. And let's talk about first kills per round. Remember I said I value that for duelists? Well, let's talk about his untraded first kills per round. 16.6%. 16.6%. This is in the top 3 untraded first kills per round in EMEA. The only other 2 players higher than him are Qualanoob and Durka. But Qualanoob, I believe, was like 16.8, so he's pretty close. Durka has 17.7. So like Durka's just out there getting first kills on his own and coming back alive. But so that's a bigger gap of a full 1%. But 16.6 is still crazy. That means 16.6% of the rounds, Kaajak is guaranteeing a 5v4 round for Fnatic. That is huge for a duelist. And to me, the reason I'm not only just rating him high, but I actually expect him to perform well at Fnatic as well. Because a lot of people are like, well, he's a rookie and he did look a little shaky in the beginning of the year, maybe even at the beginning of stage 1. And I agree. Like, there were a lot of times if you go back and watch where Fnatic, like during those replay comms and stuff, like they're all working to make sure that Kaajak is smiling, that he's having fun, that it's telling him it's okay. Like, let's get you the op. They get him the op and then he starts fragging, things like that. So yes, that happened, but also to me, the fact that Fnatic as a team clearly knew this is something they had to work on and build within Kaajak, and then he got to that point throughout stage 1, and then in playoffs, it continued to just get better and better to the point where in the grand finals, he kicks off hot and he ends hot with a plus 40 KD differential. I value that very highly. So now he's not just an opper. He's rifling. He's going in. He's creating space. He's diving in. He's able to take duels. He's taking timings. The fact that he's become a self-sufficient duelist now, I think is huge for a team like Fnatic. And I am so excited to see how he performs at Masters Toronto. Now the top 3. They are still going to have the silver titles just because, gold should only be reserved for the very, very top. But who's going to be our top 3 players of Masters Toronto? Well, I have a feeling, for whatever reason, I actually don't think it's justified, but I think this one might be a bit of a spicy take. But it's going to be Trent. And I'm saying I don't think this is justified because I think just the numbers should tell you that he's a top 3 player, minimum top 5. I mean, dude just averages out top of the line across the stat line. and he's doing that from the initiator role, right? It's not like he's just purely being set up as a duelist. Everyone's babysitting him and he gets to go out and get frags for free. No. He's like the one setting up, and then he's clutching, and then he's assisting, and then he's getting frags, and then he's playing post plant. Like, he is the Swiss Army knife here for G2. Ends up with the top VLR rating of America's, above a 3.0 rounds above replacement, so we know the impact is there. Now, yes, I know the joke is that he only played Tejo. 663 rounds of Tejo. That had to have been boring. And people are saying, well, Tejo's getting nerfed, so that means Trent's getting nerfed. Are we all goldfish? It's not like Trent was a nobody until Tejo came around, right? I mean, he was a great initiator player before too. He was an amazing Sova before that. So yes, I mean, who knows? None of us know what this meta is going to look like and who's going to perform at Masters Toronto, quite frankly. But then let's just look at the facts. Dude was playing Tejo. Yes, Tejo was strong. Does that mean every other Tejo player was top of their region? No. So Trent gets his flowers. I think he just absolutely proved that he is willing to play, you know, whatever, like he is willing to assist and open up the map in ways that G2 needs him to, and yet he'll still get the frags. He'll go and get those frags. He'll get them when they need it. He'll assist when he needs to. It is all there. And yes, part of it is also the support that's coming in from Jonah P, which we'll talk about him more. Jonah P is going to get a shout out, but because Jonah P and the combos that they had, you know, with certain combinations like the breach and things like that, yes, it's all very valuable. But again, you still have to say that Trent has become looking like one of the smartest players that we have, and he's able to hold his own as well. So that leaves 2 players. There's still quite a few players that I think are some fan favorites coming into Masters Toronto. So who is going to be our number 2? Now, before I reveal it, I'm just going to go ahead and say, if you've gotten this far in the video, or if you're skipping around, at the very least, if you're watching top like number 2, you have to watch my explanation for number 1 as well, because otherwise you're gonna get angry in the comments. You're probably gonna get angry anyway, but at least do your due diligence. Number 2 is going to be Jemkin, or should we call him Jemking, from RRQ, getting them their first ever VCT Pacific trophy, bringing them to their first ever Masters tournament. And boy, is it not an exaggeration to say he brought them there. This guy has a 4.3 rounds above replacement. He is getting you over 4 more round wins per map, per game, compared to a challengers player. Like, dude is just carrying. Dude is just hard carrying. Now, he is getting set up for it. They are doing this as a team, but still, like, he is just getting you wins. That is a crazy number. He's off the charts. He's in his own territory. And then you look at everything else. 1.3 KD, also ridiculously high. 0.91 kills per round, very high. 0.24 first kills per round. So out of those 0.9 kills per round, the 0.24 just overall is a big part of those are first kills. So he's doing everything that duelist needs to, and then he's still staying alive to make sure that he's carrying the rounds. On top of that, he has never had a negative kill death differential, like a plus minus, in a best of series in stage 1. Think about that. I believe I went back and was looking at the duelists that I wanted to include on this top 10 list. Out of all the candidates, only him and the number 1 player were the ones who never had a negative kill death differential. So that they might have had a couple negative maps, but it wasn't ever bad enough that they ended the match with, like, you know, negative whatever. And I'm not even like, there was no negative 1s. There was no negative 2s. He was always positive at the end of the match. And I think that shouldn't be surprising to those who followed him, because as much as everyone likes to meme about the 0-kill Reyna game that Jemkin had at Ascension 1.5 years ago, even in that match, he ended up being the top fragger, and they lost. But he still was the top frag in the entire server. So, like, that should just go to show that this is no fluke. He's always been this consistent. He's always putting up numbers. And to me, the only thing I ever wanted to see Jemkin do coming into 2025 was just take higher risk, right? Play like for the win. Just take a couple rounds and say, I'm grabbing this by my own and I'm dragging it across the finish line. Because before, it used to always feel like Jemkin was like, well, what's the best play to do here? Like, what is the correct play to do? And that's what he would follow, which is a good starting point. But sometimes, especially a game like Valorant, I think especially if you're duelist, you just have to say, like, no, I'm just winning this round. Like, I'm just better. You just have to have that. And I think we saw that coming into into 2025, especially in stage 1. You see certain rounds, certain decisions he makes. He just says, I'm getting this space, I'm getting us a round win, and that continues to allow RRQ to keep going. So big shout out to Jemkin for upgrading even more from who was already one of the best players in VCT Pacific. And now, if he's able to put these numbers up again at Masters Toronto, like regardless of team performance, listen, if I'm RRQ, like I'm making sure that I have everything ready to keep Jemkin in-house, because people are gonna start keeping their eyes on this guy. So with all of that, Jemkin is going to be my number 2 player going into Masters Toronto, which means who in the world is better than those crazy numbers? Who's better than a 4.3 rounds above replacement? Well, it's going to be Aspas from MIBR coming out of VCT Americas. Obviously, if you play Valorant, if you watch Valorant, you know Aspas. He's always been a star. He's always been a top 10, a top 5, a top 1 player. And now this is why I asked you to watch to the end if you watched up to number 2. Because here's why. Overall, some of the ridiculous numbers that Jemkin put up are actually just straight up better. They are just better than Aspas. Aspas actually has a better kill death ratio, 1.35, so even higher than a 1.3. So very, very impressive from Aspas. But while the numbers are just slightly better for Jemkin, at that point, if you're that similar and you're like just having the edge, this is one of those cases where I had to think about overall career, and I had to think about what they've been working with, and I had to give the edge to Aspas. I do think that matters just a little bit, but it's tough, and maybe that's not fair to Jemkin, right? Maybe I'm not being fair to Jemkin, but I kept flipping them back and forth in my own head quite a few times making this video, but at the end of the day, I'm sticking with Aspas, and he's also just a clutch machine. 29%, crazy success rate here for the clutches. And so I think all of that considered, Aspas, yes, he's in a team that's kind of built to support him, but in some ways, I think Jemkin is too. So I think it's going to be, I mean, maybe, hopefully, we get to see them play against each other, which I don't know if it'll happen because RRQ is already in playoffs, and Aspas and MIBR will have to battle it through the Swiss stage, but that would be crazy cool. That would actually be very exciting. Now I kind of want to root for MIBR during the Swiss stage because I want to see that happen. Obviously, you know, just for fun, I was just mentioning the Verno bromance as well, because I'm curious if that continues outside of the Tejo meta as well, going into Masters Toronto, because if that does, maybe even Verno should have deserved a spot in the top 10. But with that, that's going to be my top 10 players to look at for Masters Toronto, given their performance mainly in Stage 1 of VCT. Now, before we move on, I do just want to give a couple honorable mentions, but that's going to be it for my list. And just for fun real quick, let's take a look at what chat came up with during our crazy fiascos on stream. Now, we didn't put these in order because we didn't have time for that, but what you're going to notice is 7 out of the 10 we overlap. So I actually think this was quite the respectable list. So a little bit of a golf clap for my chat, because I am relieved to find out that I have been growing a rather sensible chat community on our live streams. But members that I didn't have in the top 10 that chat eventually voted into their top 10 is Nats, I think absolutely deserved, from Team Liquid, of course the IGL, but also the Star Sentinel, Rargo, who we just talked about as an honorable mention, and then Miniboo. Miniboo was a player originally I was actually pretty confident I would have in my top 10. I do think the weaker finish from Team Heretics kind of took away from that, but I also think within that, Miniboo had so little impact that I started to wonder if, you know, if there's still a little bit of consistency or meta shifting that has to be taken into account for Miniboo. So I think Miniboo is absolutely a strong candidate for top 10. I ended up not putting him in, but I'm actually very glad that he is here. And chat might have been slightly affected by me during this discussion. If you're wondering, you should check out the VOD where we did this. I'll link it down below. But we had a lot of different discussions. We had a full list of other players. Just as a quick note, the one with the stars are players that chat was kind of split on, and then the others, our chat originally said these are candidates absolutely, and then we slowly started to filter things out. So there's a couple Gen G players in here as well, because I think a lot of people wonder, like, no Gen G? And personally, that's just because I just don't think any of them have individually been standing out as much compared to some of these others. Doesn't mean that they're a weak team, doesn't mean that they're a weak player. So always a fun discussion, but that's going to be it for me here with my top 10 Masters Toronto players list. So now that you've seen it, let me know down in the comments below, who did I miss? What's one player you absolutely think deserved to be in my top 10 and I've been missing out on? Because I want to know who else I should be keeping my eye out for at Masters Toronto. That's it for this one. If you enjoyed it, hope you once again leave a like on the video, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good one.